And welcome to Behind the Gate with Scott and Kate. And believe it or not, this is our 11th episode. And tonight we're sponsored by Elm Grove Farm, who stand the sires Arthur Blue Chip and Stonebridge Terror. And we've got a special guest tonight. And before I introduce him, just wanted to go through some of his stats. 2,443 lifetime wins, 2006 second place finishes, along with 1,845 thirds and $3.89 million in purse money, and once led the Maritimes in wins back in 2008. So I'm Scott Waddell, along with co-host Caitlin Wesley here on the podcast, and I'll pass it over to Kate to introduce our special guest for tonight.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, I'm super excited to introduce we got Todd Trites, the big Todd, on board. And before we join Todd, we're going to, touch base of your 2023 stats. You had 108 starts. You had 33 wins, 19 seconds, 14 thirds. You banked $77,000 with a UDRS of 0.446. Wicked year. Even though we've seen better, don't get me wrong, work comes first, everything else happens, life in general. So I'm going to let Scott kick it off with the questions, and I'm excited to get to know more about you, Todd.
Sounds good.
All right, thanks. And thanks for taking your time out, Todd. I know you're busy with work and everything else. You're on the go all the time. So I really appreciate your time. So for those that don't know you, maybe just kind of give us a brief description of how you got involved in horse racing.
Well, Scott, I guess I'm kind of first generation in the game, which is kind of rare. My dad bought a racehorse. I believe I was 3 years old. Him and a buddy were at a sale in Moncton. My dad always went to the races, enjoyed the horse racing, but it never had anything to do with it. But anyway, they ended up buying an old racehorse and brought it to Fredericton, and Win Scott actually took the horse, and I kind of followed my dad and my brother Steve to the barn ever since.
No, awesome. And you've been driving for a number of years. You started your career right here in New Brunswick, and you've been an active participant in the industry for a long time now. So I know Kate wanted to ask you a question of some of the horses you've driven over the years.
Yeah, you've drove many spectacular horses over the years. Is there 2 or 3 of them that really stand out to you for driving wise? And, going behind the gate, were they the same every time you've gone? Or do they, know when to get a little peppier? Or, how are they in general?
Well, I mean, I've been very fortunate. I've driven some great horses over the years. One of my earliest successes with one of the most a real standout horse would have been Woodmere Topcat. I guess was probably the horse that I set some track records with and won my first Walter Dale with and stuff. So that was a big horse for me. But probably PH Breakaway as a 3-year-old to me was the standout. I mean, he beat some good horses. He beat H horses, and was a game horse time in, day out. Like he was a good solid horse. PH Best Man was another horse that I won a lot of big races with, and he was real fun to drive. He was quick off the gate, but he could come off cover. I sat a lot of miles parked with him, and he just kept grinding. So he was a special one. Dexter's Lion was another good one I had. He was my first drive in the Gold Cup and Saucer. He was an extremely fast horse who unfortunately had some lameness problems, and his career was over too soon. But he was a fast horse. And Drinking Games was probably one of my favorite mares I ever drove. She could do it all, and she did it a few times free-legged as well. So they're all special for different reasons, but uh, all of those horses were pretty consistent.
Yeah, you had mentioned PH Breakaway, Todd, and I remember him back racing in Fredericton, and along with the other horse you mentioned, I actually had both of those written down to talk to you a little bit about. The other one, of course, Woodmere Topcat, and both of them just extremely fast horses, and they were the talk of the Maritimes for a while.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly did a lot to to make me known, right? As a first generation guy, I wasn't getting drives from my uncles and stuff like that, right? Like whatever cheap horses my dad could afford, and well, lucky enough to drive some of them, and it really, made my career take off.
Excellent. Speaking of your career, you've competed a few times, Todd, in the National Driving Championship regionals here in the Maritimes. So tell us a little bit about your experience and what was the best showing you've had so far in one of these regionals?
You know what? I don't know, it was the first or second year I was in it. I remember, of course, Gilles and I were both representing New Brunswick at that time.
Yeah.
And I think went into the last race, Gilles was first and I was second in points. And I honestly can't remember who was third in points, but I know it was real tight. Like the top five were pretty tight. And I remembered whoever was third in points, I kind of had my eye on them. And I ended up, I think Gilles and I finished third and fourth in that race. And whoever was in third, I remember beating them. And I remember pulling up and I looked over at Gilles. I said, we made it, right? And he's like, yeah, like I think so. And then come to find out a couple of minutes later when they're doing the numbers up that Kenny Arsenault actually went from like fourth to first. So he was first, Gilles was second, and I was third. So that's as close as I've been. And that was big disappointment. But I mean, it's always nice to be there, right? But I've had some great experiences in it. It's just one of those things that all the guys are good drivers. It just depends on your favorites need to show up on that day, right? Because it's kind of even the way long shots and favorites you have, but you need your favorites to come through. If you can pick away with your long shots and pick up some points, but you need your good horses to be good that day, and it's tough.
Yeah, and you've been involved in a few of them, and you're in again this year, Todd, representing New Brunswick. So congratulations. Just wanted to, how does that work now for, do you know how they're doing it this year as far as, is it just going to be a straight out draw for the horses, or is there any type of draft system that they're using, or what are they doing this year?
I honestly don't know, but I'm assuming they're going to do like some type of a draft thing, right? Like we don't get to pick our horses at this level. I think they do in the for the next level, but I don't. I think that they have some way of handicapping so that everybody kind of gets, of the 8 races, everybody gets like one favorite type of thing, and I think and one post position like 1 through 8 type of thing. But I'm not 100% sure, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, definitely have a competitive field again this year. So definitely wish you best of luck, Todd. And of course, like you say, a lot of it comes down to horsepower. A lot of it comes down to luck and the luck of the draw, especially on a half-mile track. So best of luck. And Caitlin wanted to ask you something that I know that you're a big fan of, Todd, and that's fractional ownership.
Yeah, you are well aware of fractional ownership, and it's been a hot topic on the podcast for a few episodes now, and a lot of people have agreed, it's kind of the new way of the industry of how to bring in new owners, new fans. What are your thoughts on fractional ownerships?
Well, I guess there's no question it's good for the sport, and we need it. It brings new people, new faces to the track. It brings and also that brings them to the pari-mutuel windows. I think that sometimes get lost in the fact that if we don't have betters, we don't have racing, right?
That's right.
So we need new blood. Like all the old fellas that used to be hanging over the fence when I started driving aren't around anymore, right? And there's a lot more things for people to do with their money out there today. So it's important to have new blood in there. And I think it's a way for people to get into the sport without having to, have a lot of money. Like it's an investment you can make. I know guys that have four-wheelers or snowmobiles that are spending as much money on them. I might be one of those guys now that people are on horses, right? So it's a way for them to get in without spending a whole lot and having the experience. And I can tell you, as a driver, it is so fun to drive for those, because it doesn't matter if you're in an overnight race or if you're lucky enough to have a horse like American Risk and you're in some invitationals and stuff like that. You get the loudest cheers, and it's just a lot of fun to drive for.
Yeah,
It's a
tell
lot
us
of
a little.
pressure too.
Oh yeah, tell us a little bit about your experience with Andrea and George. They've done a fantastic job with their fractional ownership groups down there in Truro. Todd, what's it like to on a race day to have those owners around and cheering for, like you say, even just the overnight class horses?
Well, Caitlin can tell you, her daughter's around the barn all the time there
Yeah,
and helping them out stuff as well. It's just like one big family. Like, people are there to
yeah,
have a good time. Like, everyone's excited, and it's for me. It's interesting to field some of the questions that the owners, because these people, they haven't grown up. Like, a lot of the people I drive for know more about horses than I do, but the people in these fractional ownerships, like, they have some interesting questions, and
yeah.
it's kind of refreshing, right? So I enjoy that part of it. But I can say at George's barn, it's just like everybody's welcome, and everybody is like family there, and everybody has a good time, whether win, lose, or draw. Everyone seems to have a good time.
No, awesome. So as you look back over your driving career, Todd, you of course started in New Brunswick here, where you put up a lot of your numbers, and looking at the industry here in New Brunswick, and of course, besides the lack of government support and investment, where do you think the industry may have gone wrong in the province in the past? And what do you think about the efforts to keep Woodstock going? Because I think Woodstock may be the only track in Canada racing without either government support or some slot revenue.
Well, listen, the only reason Woodstock's racing is for the love of the game, right?
Yeah,
We've got a lot
exactly.
of people, that work hard and use a lot of their own time to keep that place going. You've got some people. I'll go back to the Renaissance Stable, for example. That are willing to load up a trailer and go down there to race, and
Yeah,
give them the horse population so they can get their dates. So I mean, they're doing an amazing job, working as hard as they can, but it's tough, right? And I think one of the in New Brunswick, without the government's help, one of the things, we didn't help ourselves. I don't think the tracks work real good together, and everyone was kind of interested and it's human nature. Everyone was interested in what was best for them instead of what was
yeah.
best for racing, and it ended up biting us in the ass.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we've got a situation here where, we're hanging by a thread here in New Brunswick, but, we seem to defy the odds every year by maintaining an industry up here. So definitely optimistic again for this year. But like you say, couldn't do it without people like George and Andrea who come up here and support the product. And on stake days, it's a long trip to Woodstock from, say, Prince Edward Island.
Yeah, it is. And I get it. I don't think I'm not the best driver in the Maritimes, but I may have logged the most miles. I put a
Yeah,
lot of miles on going around, right? So I mean,
yeah,
I get it, and I think that it's tough. I mean, one of the things is too, I guess, only the toughest people are still racing in New Brunswick, right? So it's definitely been a lot of hardship, and fingers crossed that they're able to keep going.
Awesome. And Caitlin, I think you wanted to ask Todd a little bit about what he's doing kind of outside of the Maritimes nowadays.
Yeah, as most of us have seen, you kind of reduced your number of drives uh, due to, work and everything else. Do you miss your hectic schedule? Like you said, you've put in a lot of miles for traveling to different tracks and stuff. And sometimes you would race more than, once. Um, do you miss it? Do you kind of wish to go back to that time or anything like that?
Well, back in the day, I was like, when I was working, when I had a 9 to 5 job, or actually it was 8 to 4:30, but with MB Power, I'd be working Monday to Friday. A lot of Saturdays I'd be racing in St. John, Saturday nights in Charlottetown, and Sunday in Truro. And that wasn't just once in a while. Like that was pretty well all summer long. And
Yeah.
in the wintertime, I was racing Saturdays in St. John and Truro's on Sunday. Like we didn't shut the tracks down, right? So I was going all the time. At 55, do I think I would like that schedule? I don't know. I don't know that I would, but
Yeah.
I seem to like fishing and bonfires more now. But I miss the racing aspect of it. I miss the seat time in the race bike.
Yeah.
I could never get enough of that, but I don't miss the miles that I put on, the hours I spent driving to do it. Unfortunately, Scott mentioned about me winning a driving title in the Maritimes. Well, that's tough to do from Fredericton because we raced even when we were racing, we raced here less than anywhere, right? So that meant I had to be on the road a whole lot.
Yeah.
So that the driving to do it, I don't miss, but I do miss, I do miss the racing on a lot more. It's almost, I feel sick when I hear the numbers I have now. Like I had years when I won twice as many races as I drive in now. So that puts it in perspective for me.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of your life outside of racing, you're a proud dad of four girls. They grew up around the racetrack, Todd, and I remember them quite fondly coming out and getting their picture taken with you. And one of your daughters even used to sing "Oh Canada" in the center field and stuff. So, how are your kids doing? They must be getting old now and grown up, and some of them off to school and college.
Yeah, so I actually had two of them that sang. Sam,
Yeah,
who goes by Lee now. Lee
yeah,
Lee still does some singing as well as Sydney. Sydney used to sing the anthem too. She actually did that. The funny thing is she's very quiet, an introvert person, and she did the O Canada Old Home Week for the Gold Cup at Saucer Day a couple times. So that was quite a thing for her to do as a little girl out in front of a big fan of that. But no, the girls are all doing good. Taylor's works as a paralegal for a lawyer's office. She likes what she's doing there.
good.
Lee's with MB Power. She's been there for a few years now. And Sydney and Stephanie are both work at a local French daycare. And Stephanie's hoping to get into the career of the RCMP, so they're all doing well. And my oldest Taylor has a granddaughter, or has a daughter, which is my granddaughter Lila, who gets as much time as I've had with her. She's a lot of fun. And anybody out there who doesn't have kids, I recommend having grandchildren first.
Yeah, I've got a grandchildren or a grandchild of my own, so I certainly know where you're coming from. So
Yeah.
congratulations, they're a lot of fun. I think Caitlin wanted to ask you, of course, there's a situation happening at Fredericton Raceway possibly in the coming months, and Caitlin just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it appears that Fredericton Raceway, the barn and track area, will be closing in the next little while. That will leave the remaining people that have horses scrambling for places, like to house their horses, train their horses, things like that. What type of effort do you think that will have on the race horses that are currently training down at Fredericton?
As far as I know, Caitlin, now this is I talked to Charlie Miles actually just earlier this evening,
Yeah.
and Charlie's kind of got his finger on the vibe in Fredericton, right? And it's at least a couple of years before the track, before, if it does in fact close, it's going to be a couple of years before that
Okay,
happens,
good.
I believe. I think there's 15 or 16 horses, standard breds, that are there training now. There's a few saddle horses and stuff there as well. At one time, I think the contract took them right through to 2032, but that deal kind of changed with something that Vokey had signed, is my understanding. But I think they've got at least a couple of years there, and we'll see what happens. I know the reality is the property is worth a lot, and it's got an opportunity for development, and I get that. So it's I don't know how long of a future it has, but it's not it's years, not months.
Okay, that's good news. That's good
Yeah.
news.
Yep.
On another subject, the Atlantic Provinces Harness Racing Commission are seeking a director of racing, and of course, we've had some guys in the past like Dr. Paul Hogan and Brett Revington and guys like that. When they're looking for someone like that, Todd, what do you think are some important attributes that somebody taking such a crucial job in the industry might be?
Well, I think we need somebody in there who is first focused on on business, right? On knowledge of running a business or a company type of thing. Because at the end of the day, this is a business, racing horses, right? And I think they've got to have that type of a mindset so that they're making decisions based on what's best for the business, not what's best for individuals, right? And on top of that, if you have somebody who has an understanding and a passion for, like Brian Hamilton in Fredericton when he was alive, I don't know anybody who had more passion for the game than him, right? So I mean, if you have somebody who's got the sense to run a business, and have an understanding of the horse, if you could find the fine line between those, that's important. But I think run it like a business is what needs to happen.
Yeah. Do you think they'd be better off, maybe, Todd, to look at? I know they've tried this before, getting somebody from outside our region that would be impartial and not have any ties to anybody here in Atlantic Canada. Do you think that would be an advantage to trying that again?
Possibly, but I'm not sure they've got to go outside to find somebody that fits the bill. But maybe I wouldn't be against that. I mean, I certainly think there's probably more hindrance to having strong ties than not, because you've like I say, you've got to run it like a business. So you've got to be transparent, and you've got to be, it's got to be fair for everybody, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Caitlin, I think, is going to talk a little bit about Fredericton Raceway. I know that has a special place in your heart, Todd, but some of the other tracks that you've driven on as well.
Yeah, you've driven all over the Maritimes. You've been around for quite some time for driving. So I know Fredericton is home. That's your track. That's like your heart. Is there any other tracks that you really enjoy going to and driving at?
Yeah, when I was driving for Trevin Jive with Penn Hills, he stabled down in Rockingham for a summer, and I really, really loved that track. That was in New Hampshire. Beautiful place. They used to have thoroughbred there. They had a turf track there as well. But Rockingham was a fun place to drive. It was a beautiful track, and it was a lot of fun. Of course, I had some horsepower too. That makes it fun. When you have good luck racing, you tend to like those places. But Rockingham was good. Pompano Park. When I started out driving, I was spending my winters down there, and I was very sad to see it close this past year. Pompano Park in Florida, that was a fun place to drive. I mean, I was there in the early '90s, and it was kind of an awesome place to race back then. But any track in the Maritime that's still up and running is a good track. I mean, the surface and the facilities at both Red Shores, both Charlottetown and Summerside are fun. I've had some luck at both of those tracks. You know what though? On Woodstock still has that old country feel, and it's kind of like that Presque track. I love racing at those tracks. People are screaming at you whether they're cheering for you or against you, and I don't care as long as they're there and they're cheering. So Woodstock's still a fun place to race, and I guess that's why people are willing to drive the hours to do it.
Yeah, another track that reminds me of that, Todd, too, and I've never been there, but I imagine you've driven there a few times, is Inverness. Certainly has a good feel to it, and the fans there certainly get involved in the sport over there.
Yeah, both Inverness and in Sydney and North Sydney, when there was the track, the Old Tartans Downs, they were that type of thing. There was always as many people on the back stretch as there was over in the home stretch. Yeah, I mean it's that type of a thing. Inverness, they get there early and stay late. Same thing. I haven't been driving stake races as much last few years, but I've certainly spent a lot of times crossing the causeway to both Inverness and Sydney, and both of those are fun tracks as well. I mean, Truro probably my home track now, really. And
yeah, really.
I mean, they do such a good job. That track is, I mean, I know the guys in the island don't like to hear it, but that track was the surface itself is lightning fast. And when you see the horses come, they used to be horses from the island used to come and they drop 3 or 4 seconds, and now they're taking new marks in Truro. So that'll tell you what kind of a job they're doing with the surface there.
Yeah, a lot of people used to tease that Truro must have been a little shorter than the half mile because there was so many crook miles down there.
Yeah, we heard that about St. John for years too. I'm just telling you, the surface is good.
Yeah, no, exactly. So switching back to New Brunswick for a minute, Todd, and I'm sure you remember this as I do when Horse Racing New Brunswick first took over horse racing in the province, and you had guys like Ross Galbraith involved. And, he was very close to government, did some fantastic job lobbying the Graham government at the time to invest in horse racing. Why do you think there's not that many people around anymore that that can get into government's ears and try and turn this ship around in New Brunswick?
Well, there's a few things, and I think one of them is people. You kind of get tired of banging your head on a wall, right? They're working hard and not getting the desired results. Always saying no. So that's tough, right? I mean, and I know a lot of good people like Ross, and there's been a lot of people who've worked hard over the years and have had good ties with MLAs and everything else. But it's just, I mean, I see the other side too as a father and, as a professional, someone who's never really, it's been years since I've made a living in horse racing, right? I just do it for the love. So I get when schools and hospitals are closing, it's hard to say, hey, why don't you give this gambling sport, a bunch of money? And then, the question is it a business if you need to rely on government support, or is it if it's a business, why do we need the government support? So, I mean, I see both sides of it. I don't know that we can survive without the government support. And I understand all the spin-offs and everything else that racing, the great things that racing does and the money it brings to the province. Like, I get that. But I also get, like, how does a guy go to the table and say, I want you to tell those nurses and those teachers that we don't have money for them, but we're gonna back this racing for $3 million a year.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think Caitlin wanted to kind of close things off on a positive note with some of the horses that you've been involved with George and Andrea, and kind of finish out talking about a couple of those horses and what you might expect from them this year.
Yeah, so you've drove for so many people, but ones to me that stick out because I'm at Truro and I know George and Andrea as well. Like you said, my daughter is pretty much their sidekick on race day. She likes to do the running and stuff. So, and she's looking forward to being a groom this year and a licensed one. So be prepared, Todd. And she's on it, and she's got her own horse this year that she's gonna try a race. So she's all game. But the couple that I really wanted to touch base on is first one is a mare that George and Andrea got, the General's Pride. She had a huge year with you, like 95% of the time that you drove her, she top 3 every time. Like, she must have been a fun one to drive, and she must have been like super gritty on the race.
First of all, I want to touch on your daughter, because I don't know anybody that gives you more instructions on my way out to the track. I am more afraid of her than anybody else I drive for. So just going to say that first. The General's Pride. Well, what can I say about the General's Pride? Let's just say low on natural ability and high on try. Like that, she's just a ball of hate. I used to tell Andrea, like, nothing fun about her. I don't like her in post parade. She pull the arms off you. She gets her head down. She's not great gated. She's foul, but she likes racing more than I do. Like, if you can hold her together, just you don't have to worry about urging her. You just pick your point to release her, and she wants to go ahead. She just like one of those horses that I teased Andrea and George all the time about, put someone else down to drive her. But literally, I like driving horses like that because, like I said, she's like me, no ability, but tries real hard. So she's kind of an interesting one for sure. But yeah, I mean, her numbers don't lie. Like, she was there. I mean, I think a lot of that is people saw the way she went. Not everybody wanted to own her either. Right? They did an exceptional job with her. That's a true thing of polishing a turd right there.
Another one was New Shooter. New Shooter up Renison stable. He was, it didn't seem to be like a fun one at the beginning, just because he was, locked on lines. He just seemed like, but he had the want to go. Like, he showed he had the speed. You drove him a couple times. And then he went off to Ontario and set a new mark of 150 and 1. And what is it like to know that you drove this horse from this point and then seeing it take its new lifetime mark after leaving Truro, after leaving the Renison stable? Like, it must be a huge thrill.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, I drove a few horses for Trev and Shai, for PH horses that went on to do. I mean, actually, I'm drawing a blank on his name, but one of the ones Trevin had went there. I think he paced in 47 or 48. Like, went some big. I drove him. Actually, I won an Ontario Sire Stake, just a grassroots with them one time. Trevor and I went down there, so it was kind of neat to see him go on and develop and be one of the big boys. But he was New Shooter. I only drove him a couple of times, honestly, but speed galore. He was like a dragster. Like, he, if you get him through the turns type of thing, like, he was fast and he wanted to go like nobody's business, right? He would be close to driving a thoroughbred, I guess. Like, he was that fast. But even when I drove him there, he was getting his head around to the left and kind of running out. But you can't fight a horse like that. You almost gotta let them do what they want to do, and he had enough speed that he could get himself rolling. But I expect that I see he's training back again now, and hopefully he has another good year. But yeah, he's just an extremely fast horse.
Awesome. Yeah, he's super nice. He's one of the barn favorites of always there to greet you. So it's nice to see him do what he likes to do. Last horse, and I want to touch on him just because you mentioned him prior to American Risk. Super special horse. He has been around for a few years now with and I love his story because when the Renaissance claimed him, they only claimed him for 10,000. They didn't claim him for to be an invitation horse. They wanted a horse and start their fractional ownership things. So he's done amazing things in the time that they had. What's he been like you in your driving career?
Well, he's probably one of the best managed horses I've driven. Like I've say the Renaissance stable has done an incredible job with him to keep him as sharp as long as they have. I was a little bit weary of them, when they were putting him in races like the Governor's Plate stuff, like because really I thought he was a top class horse, not an invitational horse, and I wasn't sure they were making the right decisions because I have driven horses before that people want them in those races just because it's nice to be in them, but I like a horse to be in where he can be competitive. But
Yeah.
American Risk has stepped his game up every time they've asked him to. Right? He's never. Of all the times I drove him, he's always showed up. There's one time I drove him in Truro in an overnight event that he wasn't feeling good that day, and he that's the only lackluster performance he ever had, and he wasn't well, so that wasn't on him. But he is such a fun horse to drive, and I dare say easy. He's very controllable. You can take him back with two fingers. He can leave 100. Like I say that people talk about that all the time, but I mean, the best horses in the Maritimes the last 2 years, when I wanted to, if I was leaving 4 or 5, if I wanted the front, the only thing getting in my way was the truck. Like he was that good
Yeah.
off the gate. But I mean, just not as he wasn't going to be a winner in those races all the time, but he always showed up, and just a great horse to drive. Everybody who's ever drove him had success. Like it's not anything I did. He was just a truly amazing equine athlete.
Yeah, he's been a fun horse to watch over the last couple of years, and like you say, Todd, he's comes to play every single week, and just love to watch that horse race. He can bust the gate, and he's tough as he comes. So we've talked a lot about horse racing, of course, but we wanted to get to up to date on kind of what you're doing outside of horse racing. You're not driving as much, we know that, but what are you doing outside of racing? I know that you retired from MB Power, and you're doing some traveling around Canada.
Yeah, so I'm working with Baffinland, a company up in northern Nunavut. Like when I say northern, I'm like 2,300 kilometers past the last tree. Like I'm way
Wow.
up there at a
Yeah.
remote site, and so I'm spending 3 weeks there at a time. So I'm 21 days out, 21 days in. So not something I would have done when I was younger and had kids at home, but it's a great fit for this stage of my life. It allows me to have basically 6 months of the year off, so I can do things that I've always liked to do. I just have a little bit more time to do it now. Fishing, golfing. I've had a golf membership the last 3 years. Lonnie Stokes and I golf all the time when I'm home, and if I'm not golfing, I'm on the river, and if I'm not in the river, I'm on the snowmobile or side by side, chasing my granddaughter around, doing whatever. So I'm enjoying. This is a more laid back, not Todd at the track quite as much anymore, but I've still got the fire in me to race. It's just it's a smaller part of my life now.
Yeah, we definitely enjoy watching you, Todd. So continued success. And when you do decide to drive, all the best this season. And of course, you've got the Atlantic Regionals coming up. So we wish you the best of luck at Red Shores later on here in the spring.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing about the region. It's I'll miss Gilles being in it this year, because I'll tell you what,
Yeah.
you just had to stick close to Gilles, and you're going to be there. Like he's one of the best, and he helped make me the driver I am. I learned a lot from getting my ass kicked by him at St. John, and him and Steve Mahar. Like they were good guys to drive with, and I learned a lot about racing from those fellows. But I'll tell you a little story. We were in Truro one year, and I knew the horses pretty good because I've been racing in Truro. But I noticed the group of drivers we were all sitting around talking at the table, and Gilles, who's kind of an introvert for those who don't know him well, he was
Yeah.
over in the corner sitting by himself reading the program and kind of studying. And didn't he go out and kick her ass to get that? He's got good talent, and he's got a great head for the game. And unfortunately, he's not going to be in it this year. But I'll see what I could do for New Brunswick and hopefully get top two.
Yeah, no, all the best. And you've been a terrific ambassador for racing here in New Brunswick, Todd, and wish you all the best in that. So that'll wrap up another edition of Behind the Gate with Scott and Kate. And just wanted to remind you that our next guest on the podcast is a young fellow. He's just 21 years old, out of the United States. His name is Brett Beckwith. Not sure if you're familiar with him out there yet, folks, but you want to remember this guy. He won over 400 races as a 20-year-old last year, and he's got 160 so far. So we're going to have a conversation with him coming up next week. And then we've got David Dowling after that. And we'll catch up with David on episode number 13. So again, thank you very much to our sponsor, Elm Grove Farms. And if you have any ideas for the podcast, feel free to pass them on to us at any time. So I'm Scott Waddell, your co-host, along with Caitlin Wesley. And again, a big thank you to Todd Trites. And we'll be back with episode 12 on Monday.